Hi, and welcome to Take It from Toni. A lot of my shows, we talk about different topics and everything. And today, my best friend for life, basically, is Robert Patrick. Robert, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to having a conversation with you this morning,
Oh,
or this
thank you.
afternoon, or whenever you listen to it.
Robert's in LA, and I'm in Maine. So we're doing this show at 9 o'clock his time.
We cover the
Rob,
world.
right, exactly. Robert and I go back about 45 years.
Squeak 46,
46 years.
74.
Yeah.
That's 48 years.
Honey, you're my longest relationship.
Yeah, likewise.
Robert and I go back, and you've heard on some of my shows, and it's also a part of my book. In Chicago, there was a restaurant, Art Deco restaurant, that opened up by the name of Arnie's. And it was the hit of Chicago on State Street or Rush Street.
1030 North State Street at Maple.
Yes.
It was the bottom floor of a high rise that had just been built. And it went around an atrium. And there was the garden room and the wicker room, and then the main dining room that surrounded this atrium filled with tropical plants.
Oh, it was gorgeous. And at the time,
it was magnificent. Yeah. Like no one had ever seen anything like it before.
Arnie Morton opened that up. He used to work with Hugh Hefner.
Right.
He and Klaus Fritsch.
Right. Yeah. He stole a bunch of people from Playboy.
Right.
All the managers. Noel Goldstein.
Oh, I remember Noel. Yeah.
Yeah. Heavyset guy. He was really, really sweet.
I forgot.
He didn't last very long, but but that's putting up with Arnie,
Oh yeah.
I always called Arnie a genial bastard. Really nice. He could be really, really nice, and then he could be just horrible in a moment's notice. I mean, just without any notice. But he the one thing I liked about Arnie was that he always, for the most part, stood up for the staff. If there was a problem, it wasn't necessarily the staff's fault.
Right.
And I talk about that in my book.
Oh, wow, that's good. I didn't cover that.
Yeah, but I tell people, if you waiting tables is a horrible job. It's soul sucking. And it's not that everyone is bad, because they're not. Most everyone is wonderful, but it only takes one person there to ruin a waiter's whole day.
Oh yeah.
And Arnie was pretty good about standing up for the wait staff in cases like that. I remember one time a guy complained, and Arnie got so upset with him, he asked him to leave. And that was pretty amazing. And then, of course, there were the Cupsonettes, Irv and Essie. Irv had Cup's column in the Sun Times. It was a gossip column, and he would bring in celebrities to dine at Arnie's restaurant, and then the next day it would say Carol Channing seen at Arnie's dining, with blah 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 blah. And Arnie always picked up the tab, which is fine, but the Cupsonettes never left a tip. And finally, I got so fed. They were horrible human beings. They're just the miserable SOBs, not nice, not charming, not any, except to their celebrity guest. And then they were all bow down to the gods of fame. But the wait staff got shafted every time a cup table would end up in your station. You knew you were going to make any money on that table, and it would be hundreds of dollars tab and not a tip, and a lot of work.
Oh yeah.
And so finally I got fed up with him and I told Arnie, you know, the cups and it's never leave the wait staff any tip ever. He goes, what the fuck, are you kidding? And he walked right over to them, whispered in Cup's ears. Cup turned about 10 shades of red, and after that, always a $20 bill on the table.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh,
I mean, come on, all those dinners, free dinners and everything, and the best of the best for Cup, and never a thank you monetarily for the wait staff. And Arnie flew off the handle. He was just furious with that.
good, good.
Yeah,
I mean, he was very entitled, or he felt he was.
right. Oh, Cup.
Yeah,
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 definitely. Yeah,
yeah.
no, Klaus, Klaus
Yes,
Fritsch,
Herr Fritsch,
Herr Fritsch, father as well.
father, or
Yeah,
Mrs. Fritsch on
right.
occasion.
I mean, he really stuck with it to the very end.
Yeah.
You know,
There's another funny story about Klaus that I love sharing because it's how he took care of his gay staff, um, because most of this wait staff was gay.
oh, he handpicked all of you.
And uh, one time I was the maitre d' at lunch towards the end of my career with them. And Leroy Neiman, the painter, and his girlfriend came in for lunch. And I don't know, I can't remember what he did, but he did something. And I tried to make his lunch as unpleasant as possible. Unbeknownst to me, he had been nasty to the waiter, and the waiter was doing everything in his power to be impertinent. And so Leroy Neiman had been drawing a drawing of, we had a guy carving roast beef on the stage for lunch. It was, you know, there was always a circus of some kind going on at the restaurant. And Leroy Neiman was making a drawing of the chef carving, and he was going to give it to Arnie. On the back of it, he wrote, "Dear Arnie, I had the most horrible experience today with two of your queens. Those faggots, blah, 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 blah." He went on and on and on about how horrible he'd been treated. And he gave it to who? Klaus Fritsch.
Oh,
Klaus read it and said, "Thank you very much. I'll take care of this." And he went and had it framed and then gave it to Arnie. So Arnie never saw the back of the. And all I'm thinking is, somewhere along the line, someone's got a Leroy Neiman drawing. And on the back of it is this horrible letter of complaint. The one thing that saved us was that the night before at Zorene's, the disco, Leroy Neiman took a swing at one of the managers because he got drunk and he was acting up. And so he was already on the shit list. But it was so funny that Klaus just saved our ass by
yeah.
having framed, because we would have been fired.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, no, I mean, that whole thing was a circus. That was the right word.
Yeah, yeah, crazy. The bar scene, you know, there were ladies of the trade, as it were, who worked the bar,
Oh,
who had apartments in the tower, and they were pretty wonderful. And yeah, it was a challenge, that's for sure. But it was good money,
It was
and
good
we had
money.
fun, and made lifelong friends for as long as they lived.
Yeah,
Many of them didn't.
I know.
Yeah,
I know. I mean, we were all like a family there.
we were.
I
And
mean,
and we were of an age. I mean, I was 21 when I started there. I think you were probably around that age too.
yeah,
Um, and not to give you your age away.
it's all right, Carl.
And the that's when you make your best friends. That's when you make your friends for life. Is when
We
you're
were
in
all
your
growing
20s.
up together.
you are all growing up together, and life is an adventure, and you share everything with those people. And that's the real sadness of the AIDS epidemic, is that so many people passed. We don't know what the world would have been like had they lived. And then
Exactly.
for those of us who survived, all of our good friends are gone. The
I
ones that
know.
we made when we were supposed to have, we'd still be friends, like you and I.
Right, exactly. I mean,
Uh,
we definitely went to too many funerals at a young
yeah,
age.
yeah, yeah.
We really did. And, a lot of them, I mean, everything was so new at that time. It was frightening.
Oh, in the 70s?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that Arnie's was sort of a petri dish for being gay.
Yeah.
Um, it was a safe spot. Um, no one gave you a lot of lip.
Yeah.
We were a crowd unto ourselves, and we were supported. And so that gave us some strength when we were out on the street, as well
Exactly.
as some confidence. Uh,
Exactly. And I
and
mean, after we would finish up work, we'd go to the bars.
Well, of course, what else was there to do? There was all that smorgasbord of men uh, to be sampled. Why would you want to
Everybody,
go home and ruin a perfectly good shift?
I know, exactly. We'd all meet at the bistro.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Well,
that,
and there were so many different places. Punchinello's on Rush Street was
right.
a hangout for a while, and the weekends
Carols.
we'd go Carol's. Yeah, that wasn't my favorite bar. There was something about that bar that I didn't like.
I
Uh,
didn't go there that often.
it was too cavernous. It was too big.
Yeah.
You didn't feel held in it. The bistro was huge, but you felt like you were held inside of it
Yes.
comfortably. Um, I always
Oh,
found it a fun place to go to dance. It wasn't a very successful pickup bar for me, but
well, I remember the bearded lady.
oh yeah,
Oh, she was,
Bobby Starr.
yeah,
Yeah, he and I would run into each other on the street during the day because I lived up in Boys Town for many years,
yeah,
and he was always the nicest guy. Uh,
yeah.
and
He became a
a,
teacher.
a funny story, I was dating, or sort of seeing, not so much dating, a little gymnast, Greek gymnast. I can't remember his name. He was really, really cute. And I'm at the bistro one evening, and I'm leaning against the stage, and all of a sudden I hear someone taps me on the shoulder, and I turn around. There's a drag queen behind me up on the stage, and it's my little gymnast. And he goes, "Don't you recognize me?" No. And of course, I didn't know that he was a drag queen. And I was like, uh, uh, oh. It didn't go anywhere, but it was certainly a surprise. But Bobby Starr was always great.
Oh, yeah.
A bearded lady, definite an icon of gay Chicago in the 70s.
Oh, absolutely.
Did you get
Absolutely.
that book? I told you about that book. There's a sort of a bio on the bistro.
I
Uh,
didn't get it yet.
yeah, and
I'd
it talks
love to
about the
read
bearded
it.
lady, and he ended up moving to Japan with his boyfriend, and teaching English there, and collecting Japanese artifacts, and came back and died, not of AIDS, some other disease took him. He was in his 50s, I think. But really, it's sort of interesting. He was much more complex than you would think.
Yeah.
Um, and he definitely had a handle on the bearded lady. Uh, because when he wasn't the bearded lady, he was a really nice guy.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, not that he was not nice when he was a bearded lady, but
He was outrageous.
the bearded lady was a character unto itself.
Oh,
Uh, and
definitely. What about Caesar? You remember Caesar?
No.
A Filipino guy would be in drag, long hair.
Oh, they
Okay.
all have long hair.
Well, they all have long hair. Either it's real
One
or
day
fake.
or the other.
Oh, and what about the oak tree at 4 o'clock in the morning with the waitress Frankie?
Yeah, I don't remember Frankie, but I do remember the oak tree. And it was funny. I found on Facebook a, a group devoted to Rush Street in the 70s and 80s.
Oh, wow.
And there were several threads of conversation about Frankie at the oak tree.
Real.
And that tickled me no end that it was that it wasn't just us gays who remember Frankie. It
Wait a minute, you're frozen. Wait a minute.
late night
Yeah.
Grease.
Good. Oh, I know. And all the people coming in, this computer is telling me it's unstable, but I think we're okay. No, I remember going in there at 4 o'clock in the morning, and all the straight people that were in there would leave because we'd all come in a force.
Yeah, as a group. Yeah.
I know.
I remember once a bunch of us met at my apartment on Pine Grove before we went into work one evening, and we got pleasantly buzzed and hopped on the 151. There must have been 4 or 5 of us giggling schoolgirls, and people were just like,
oh yeah.
And we didn't give them a second glance. It was like, fuck you. We're here. Right. We're queer.
I'm just kind of picturing people who go back to our time, our days, the bistro, and they're listening to us going back and forth.
Right.
That would give them such a confirmation, such a good feeling.
Yeah, absolutely.
That all those days are remembered and cherished. I mean, I hear Barry White and I just go, oh.
Oh, I know. Someone hooked a Barry White song to one of their posts on Instagram, and it made my heart go flippity flop.
I know, Robert.
I was just like, oh my God. And then the other day, someone posted something about MacArthur Park, and it reminded me of the Donna Summer MacArthur Park.
I know.
I posted it, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, MacArthur Park! It's melting in the rain." But that was a big moment.
Oh.
One thing I wanted to say was about Arnie's. We were gays were the it people of the 70s for a certain set of straight people. They all had their gay. And so it was sort of like you were a celebrity, a star in your own right at Arnie's, because almost everyone had their favorites who would come in and ask to sit in your station.
Oh, absolutely.
And it made, excuse my voice, it made for a very welcoming and warm sort of environment, so that when you left and you were out on the street, not that you didn't get the occasional faggot yelled out of a passing car, but I never felt unsafe.
Exactly.
And I don't know why that is. It may have been stupidity, but it felt like we had a shield around us.
I agree.
Because gay was new, and the sexual revolution was going on, and people just wanted a piece of that fairy dust.
Yes.
That was sort of just flying off of us.
Exactly.
And it made for a really safe time. I'm glad I came out in the 70s.
Yeah.
I would have hated to come out in the 80s when AIDS was so prevalent. That would have been very frightening and scary.
Oh, it would have been. Was it hard for you to come out, Robert?
No, we growing up, we never talked about sex, um, but and love. But my mother, at one point in our life together, my mom and I, she was a single mother, had a lesbian relationship, and her partner, Mary, was the best dad I ever had. She'd throw her arm around me and go, education is your ticket out of here. She had to know that I wasn't going to make it if I stayed in Rapid City. South Dakota is where I grew up. And she kept pushing me to excel in school so that I would have a ticket out of Dodge, as it were, to a larger world. I went to college out of state into Minnesota. And then after 2 years there, I auditioned for the Goodman School in Chicago at the Art Institute, and got accepted and moved to Chicago under, my mother was distraught, but she finally gave up on it. And once I got to Chicago, I knew that I was gay in college, my sophomore year. I had sort of figured it out. I didn't have the words for it, but I knew I liked men better than I liked ladies, although I kept dating. And because that's what you did.
Exactly.
But when I got to Chicago and at the Goodman, there were other men like me.
Yeah.
And we were in an environment that was very safe also. It was a theater school, a drama school, and they were very nurturing. And so we all sort of fell together. And suddenly I was just gay.
Yeah.
And I never looked back.
Of course not. No.
And I think that made it easier. And I mean, I never discussed with my mom my sex life.
No.
But I mean,
You
come
didn't
on.
need to.
I don't, yeah, she occasionally would go, it'd be nice to have grandchildren. I said, yes, wouldn't it? I don't know where you're going to get them. So she had to she married a man after I moved to Chicago, who had two daughters who had children. So she was a grandmother suddenly. And it was like
pressure is off. Pressure is off.
Pressure is definitely off. But I never stopped being who I was.
No, you didn't
hide anything from my mother. She never asked.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel compelled to tell her.
No.
And I don't feel like I got any less love for being who I was.
Of course not. You were very close to your mother.
We were a unit.
Yeah.
I mean, all of the women in my family were very nurturing. My grandmothers particularly. One of them was a psychic. She was an amazing woman. I called her the Sybil because she always seemed to know what was going to happen a step ahead of what it happening. And the day she died, I felt it, that she had passed. And I called my mother and I said, Grandma passed today. She goes, I was just getting ready to call you.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, she instant messaged me. And those weren't the words I used, but that's what it was like in today's vernacular. It was like, I'm gone from this plane.
Right.
You should know this. And then my other grandmother was just a bundle of love. And she loved her grandchildren more than anything. I spent many summers. She was in Springfield, Illinois. Many wonderful summers with her. And my grandfather there too was a great guy. But yeah, the women in my life were really dominant. And try as my mother might to find a male role model for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, didn't have much use for them. I was interested in them um, to find out more about being a man.
Right.
I wasn't interested in them in what they wanted to do, like go hunting, fishing.
Yeah.
Yeah, things like that didn't
Messy.
interest me. Let's make something.
Yeah, let's make her sew something.
Show me how to cook.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All
And
of that
so,
other stuff.
yeah, all the
Messy.
girl things. I
Right.
was a devotee of Family Circle and women's magazines because I wanted to know how to make your life better. Um, and taking care of the car or going hunting and fishing. Although Mary loved to go hunting, and she'd drag my mother and I off into the wilds of the hills, go deer hunting and grouse hunting and antelope hunting and pheasant hunting and duck
Oh,
hunting. And it was
yeah.
horrible, horrible, horrible.
I mean, I
So
just
I always
can't.
made sure I went with my watercolors and
Yeah.
materials in a book so that I could stay at the camp and do whatever it was I wanted to do and not have to be out in the field killing things.
That's
Um,
true.
yeah,
But, I mean, you are very loved. You always have been.
yeah.
And even our days at Arnie's, when you would walk into a room, Robert, you took control of it. I
Well,
watched you.
yeah, I'm unfortunate in that I'm 6'4" tall. So it's hard not to be noticed when you go anywhere when you're that tall. I,
Yeah.
I'm of two minds. I can be very, very shy, and it's very hard for me to talk to people sometimes. And then other times it's like a switch goes on, and I'm
Yeah.
your best friend. I've always known you, and but I have to be careful because I am so big, that not to overwhelm people. And I think that that was my problem with relationships, uh, loving relationships with
Yeah.
other men, was that I was too much.
But I watched you come into a room, Robert, and it wasn't just your height. It was, and I remember this like it was yesterday. You would walk into a room and I could see you look around and survey the room. And there were times where you surveyed the room and you sat back. And then there were times that you were very forward and you would see something and you would go right to it and take care of it. It was, I felt for you that was a gift that you didn't even know you had at the time. You didn't even know you were doing it.
Right. Yeah.
But,
Thank you. That's very kind of you to
well,
say.
no, it's true. I
Uh,
watched it.
uh, my friend and our friend Jimmy Cates
Yeah.
used to say, "Watch out for Robert Patrick. He knows his shit, and if you cross him, he'll read you. He'll let you know that you've transgressed in some way, or he can tell the future, see the future." And I'm not blood related to any of the women in my life. I was adopted. But I do think that my grandmother, who I say was psychic, passed some of that on,
Yeah.
that ability, and not that you can learn it. I don't know that it's true that you can learn it. Um, I think either you have it or you don't. But she
Right.
may have seen in me unwittingly a fellow traveler who knew in advance what was going to happen. And I'll be the first to admit it, that doesn't happen. It's not like I know that's going to happen.
No. No,
It just
feel.
it's just a feeling you get.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, well,
No, I
thank you.
mean,
That was very sweet.
No, it's true. I've watched you, especially in Chicago during those days. You you were very hungry to learn. You were like a sponge.
Mhm.
But art was in your heart.
Yeah, it took me many years. I ended up, just for our audience's sake, I ended up working in the art fields, both nonprofit and for profit. And I don't know how I mean, I know how I ended up doing that as a career, but I didn't plan for it to happen.
It was meant.
But when I look back, once I was into that career and I look back at all the things I'd done, Arnie's and my education in Minnesota and even in high school, and then in Chicago at the Goodman, and Arnie's, of course, was played a huge role. Um, and being in the Art Institute as a student was very stimulating.
Yeah,
Whether you know it or not, you're getting fed a lot of information, and if you're open to it, it'll just sit in there. And so, by the time I was in my art career, I looked back and I went, everything's prepared me to be where I am today.
it's
I,
true.
you know, my language skills, my art appreciation skills, my understanding of human nature, my boldness, my not being afraid to talk to strangers, which I got from my mother. She was a phenomenal conversationalist, because she listened, for one thing, but also she had a very pleasant manner about her, very open and non-threatening.
That's
Um,
a gift.
it is a gift. And I don't remember thinking as a child, oh, that's something that I should remember. But once I discovered that I had that ability, I went, oh, that's just like mom.
Yeah.
Uh, and uh, so, yeah, it was interesting. It was like, it took me 6 years of thrashing about while I worked at Arnie's. But one day when I woke up and I said, I looked in the mirror and I was all haggard looking, and
Yeah.
I said, I've got to stop this. I can't work here. I can't do this anymore.
I
It,
remember that.
it's going to kill me. And so I quit, and I didn't work for 8 or 9 months. And
But didn't you start with an art gallery over on Oak Street,
on Walton Street.
Walton Street?
So a friend of mine from Arnie's had quit Arnie's soon after I left, and we lived down in Pilsen, where you came and got me to take me back to Wrightwood,
Yeah.
where I stayed with you for a few days,
Yeah.
weeks, however long that was. Who remembers?
Who remembers?
All I know, it was a bed, and I needed it.
I
Um,
know.
and, yeah. And I remember that there was only nail polish in the refrigerator, but
Yes.
and yogurt. But um, the where was that going?
Uh,
Oh, he was working. He formed a company with two artisans in Pilsen who did faux finishes for interiors. They painted murals and did faux wood, fake wood, and marble and things like that. And they hooked up with a decorator, a society decorator named Hudson Brown,
yep.
who had a shop on Walton Street. And they needed, Hudson wanted one of them to run the shop. And so Lenny, my friend Lenny, said, Robert, why don't you come and work for us? And I can't pay you a lot. I think it was like $5 an hour. It was just, but it was something to
Yeah.
do. And it wasn't waiting tables.
Exactly.
So I said, sure. What do I know? And so I was there for a few months, and I did really well in that environment. I hated Hudson Brown. Everyone hated Hudson Brown. He was a nasty queen. But whether he was gay or not, it didn't matter. He was just a nasty human being.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to speak ill of the dead, but
No, be honest.
but his assistant would, this is a great story. His assistant would spend most of her day, if he wasn't in the shop, and we sold his rejects. So he'd order something for a client and they wouldn't want it, and it would go into the shop as resale items. So there was Dongia furniture. I mean, all the big furniture names,
Yeah.
Tchotchke. We brought some of our artists' work in that we knew from the Pilsen days into the mix. And so it was a real stew pot of stuff. And she was always in the back room poring over the want ads in the Tribune. And one day she hollered out, "Robert, come here, I found a job for you." I didn't know I was looking.
Yeah.
And she says, so I went back